Okay, let's get the meeting started, everyone. Hey, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Lents Neighborhood Livability Association. A couple little announcements. Every Saturday morning, we meet at West Rock, a group of volunteers, and that's how we raise money to finance what our organization does. We clean up the litter that flows out of their facility, and they make a nice donation to us, and we don't rely on any government grants. It's money that we actually earn. This Sunday is the VFW breakfast, and the details are in the handout. And then we have one piece of business tonight, and it's when Shar and I first started the LNLA back in 2017, the entire cost for the paperwork, the insurance, the filing with the IRS to become a 501c3 came out of our pocket. And what we're asking our membership to approve us to do is reimburse ourselves for our cost in starting up the organization. And Bob Santangelo, the first couple of years, donated out of his pocket the cost of the turkey dinners that we provided for 50 families in Lents. So anyway, we're a consensus organization, and those of you that have signed participation agreements have the right to say yay or nay. And is there any discussion? Is there anyone that...
Can I just make a motion that we reimburse you and Mr. Santangelo?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I second
That will be
that.
great. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we have consensus. Thank you all. And with that, our guest speaker is Betsy Johnson. I will turn the meeting over to her and go for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for allowing me to come out. When Shar called me and asked me to come, I had visited with the Lents Community Association when I was running for governor. And her words, I'm going to make them sound harsher than they were, but she said, you liked Lents when you wanted something, do you still like Lents now that you've lost? And the answer was, hell yes I do. I'm an Oregonian, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a native Oregonian. I'm watching Portland deteriorate. I think that Lents has borne a disproportionate burden in the deterioration of our metropolitan area. And as I live in Scappoose, so I don't even live in the county, but as an Oregonian, my sense of fairness and my dissatisfaction in the services that government is providing you guys is pretty high. And so when she extended this invitation, I said I would come on the condition that it's a conversation. I still have the opportunity and the ability to get people on the phone. That is going to decline over time now that I'm no longer honorable, but right now I can still get state agency heads to call me back. And I've got a little bit of a bully pulpit in that I'm the political analyst for one of the TV stations and have the opportunity to lift up some issues in a way that they might not get lifted up otherwise. And I am more than happy to use what power I have after 2 decades in the Oregon legislature to talk about what's going on out here and to continue to sound the gong that things in Portland and Multnomah County, frankly the whole state, have got to get better. When I was in the legislature, I represented District 16, which was Tillamook, Clatsop, Columbia, a little nibble of Western Washington, and a little nibble of Multnomah County, basically on the working waterfront down under the St. John's Bridge. And one house in Yamhill. So technically I represented 6 counties, one house in Yamhill. So Shar said, yeah, we're just going to come out and have a conversation. I don't have 45 minutes of prepared remarks in my pocket. I just want to hear from you guys, and today seems like an unusually ripe day to talk about stuff. The response out here today to somebody brandishing a gun And Shar, according to the guy from Channel 2, it was the rapid response people that,
So it was Lance Hamill?
I don't know who the dude was.
I'm not sure who it was.
Oh, okay.
I never really said
It
yet.
was rapid response, yeah.
But it was, we didn't know if it was rapid response or Portland Street response.
Right.
I was just picking up what I knew from the news.
Yeah.
So, having that happen and then a death, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, basically I think we all share the same opinion, even though I don't live here. This has got to stop. It has got to stop. And one of these reporters asked me, what can just ordinary citizens do? And the answer is exactly what you're doing tonight. Come together, express your discontent with how things are happening in your neighborhood. Use people like Angela Todd back here, who runs a huge podcast with, what, approaching 50,000 people on some of the platforms?
Yeah, 49,000 5 minutes ago, but I'm not paying attention.
To use her, when Angela and I first met, it was like 6, and now it's like 50,000.
Right, right.
To use people like her, who people pay attention to and listen to use people like me to continue to tell your story. Oh, of course you're not.
Yeah.
And so with that, I just want to have a chat.
I got a question about, now recently the governor talked about not giving money to Multnomah County and Portland unless they make some changes. What do you think about that situation, and what do you see there happening?
Well, again, I'm not on the inside anymore, but I see it as a two-edged sword. There's part of me that says, good, I'm glad that you're asking for some accountability, because Multnomah County's general attitude has been, give us the money, we know what's best, and we'll produce. I'm going to digress briefly to say that they hit the state up for $12 million to open a 4-story shooting gallery and an alcohol consumption facility with a handful of sober beds on the 4th floor, right downtown, right near the Benson. Frankly, if I were hanging on to my sobriety by a hair, the last thing I want to do is to crawl through a shooting gallery of users to get to my little bed on the top where maybe I can maintain my sobriety. Good luck with that. But that was another demonstrated flop of Multnomah County. So good on the governor for asking for concrete plans and accountability and not just give us the money and we'll let you know how great we are. The bad part is that, in my opinion, she's poured gas on an already pretty volatile situation. I'm embarrassed that Multnomah County and the city are fighting. I had hoped that that would stop, but it doesn't seem to abate. And so now she set them on each other, and she set the two of them on the governor. So we've got this triangulated fight going on, when is all most of us want is to get people off the streets. And I just want to share with all of you for a moment, I have had a very profound education over the course of the last 5 months about the different philosophies of housing people. I had an office when I was running for governor right downtown. It was on 3rd and Washington. And we had 5 dead bodies within a few block radius of the office. And I was joking with somebody before the meeting started. Nothing gives you a sense of possibility more than arriving at work at 7 o'clock in the morning and watching the coroner zipping somebody up in a black bag. It was awful. 4 of them were violence or drugs, and the 5th one threw himself off a parking structure. But living in one of the doorways was this person. And I have to say, shamefully, I walked by that person a lot, because there's a person in every door. And there were a lot of very young kids working on the campaign, and one of the kids said to me, that person looks like they're deteriorating pretty fast. You're in the business of fixing stuff. Fix that. And so I went on a ride along with Portland Police, and at the end of the ride along, I asked if they would do a welfare check. 2 very substantial things happened as a result of that welfare check. First of all, I watched 2 Portland cops approach this woman with a degree of empathy and compassion that bordered on tenderness. She was sleeping in a doorway covered up with this little flimsy blanket, One of the officers was a very young woman, just graduated University of Portland, and this was her first job. The other was a grizzled Navy veteran whose previous job had been bomb demolition. I said, boy, did you pick a good occupation to come to Portland with. And they were so gentle with her, just eliciting information. Have you eaten today? Do you need water? And suddenly she had a name. And I will tell you, everything changed when she had a name. It changed me dramatically. And so I made it a crusade to get her into housing. 5 months, and I don't know how many $1,000s later, I finally got her into housing. And I just learned today that she's transitioned out of the house where she was into a facility to offer some care for drug and mental illness problems. But this isn't just let's build everybody a house and put them in it and they will do well. At Christmas time, when it was going to be 19 degrees, I was down kneeling next to her on the street begging her to go into a facility. We got her into a shelter. She was there for 2 nights and fled. She went into another shelter and fled from there. And so I have learned in a very visceral way that this isn't just build everybody a house. And the way Multnomah County and Portland do it, build everybody a house at the tune of $400,000 a door.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to live happily ever after. It doesn't work that way. Yes, sir.
My last calculation on what the city spent, or has spent, is roughly $100,000 per census homeless person. In other words, not sleeping on a couch, etc. If I handed you $100,000, you'd probably find a place to live. But now the governor's come up with billions of dollars that she wants to solve this problem. And the words that just came out of your mouth are that they're building $400,000 apartments. So billions of dollars to build housing when many of these people, housing is somewhere on the list, but like the lady you just talked about, she needed more care before traditional housing became an option.
And Angela and I talked earlier today, and she said that the Multnomah County 4-story shooting gallery cost more than per square foot than the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah,
Yes.
5-star.
yeah.
Oh, and currently there's no sleeping there.
And,
Like,
yeah.
you know, they don't have it set up.
Yeah, let's build another Wapato.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta stand up for Wapato now. That was the old Wapato.
No, we like the new Wapato.
I have been very heavily associated with the new Wapato.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
COVID has slowed the trajectory down, and the additional costs that were larded on were unbelievable. But they're housing 150 people a night.
And doing a fantastic job, again, with no government help.
Not only no government help, active government antagonism.
Yes,
That
Yes.
because Alan Evans and his model wants to take the person and say, what drove you to the streets? Let's attack that problem first, versus this housing first,
Right.
where we take somebody and drop them into a house with no support mechanisms, and that's where they end up, and they're not going to make it, in my opinion. We had one of those in Astoria, that was one of the cities that I represented, and these guys thought, well, if we build it and we take government subsidized people, it'll work out just fine. Yeah, right up until somebody stuffed pillows in the toilets, and the water damage was in 6 figures, and somebody else lit it on fire. Another $500,000 problem. So the thing that bothers me probably the most is seeing how much money is sloshing around right now, and how little accountability there is, and how the needle hasn't changed down, it's accelerated.
the reality of the homeless industrial complex
Yeah.
is there. To have that much money out there and people with their hands in the pots to give solutions that don't reach the people that need the solutions.
Well, and the committees to form the committees to form the committees to talk about it, and the
I'm just
501c3s,
telling my wife that.
and the 501c3s that are created, and we got to pay the director, and then we got to pay the development person, and everybody's working the same
Yeah.
corner. And I think we talked about the Carl Vinson before, didn't we?
Yes, ma'am.
I like her.
Brownsville.
Yeah, Yeah,
We had 4 conversations done,
cool,
4 interactions.
cool. I knew I recognized your face in that hat.
That's why Shar invited me,
right,
and
that's right.
and this is why I wear this hat, miss.
Cool.
It was to reintroduce myself to you.
Well, your hat reintroduced itself. Anyway, the other thing that I'm seeing now, not only that people have told me, Shar and I were talking about this earlier, but it's a sort of natural metastasis. It's coming out of Portland and going other places. And the more that we enable that behavior with a DA that doesn't behave like a DA in Washington County, the more the problem is going to show up in Happy Valley, in Astoria, in...
I was in McMinnville yesterday, their main city park, which is a gym, filled with RVs. And people stumbling from vehicle to vehicle.
Well, Angela did one of my favorite pieces. Angela, it's your piece. Tell them about it.
Which one are we talking about?
We're talking about the lady in the yellow coat. Piece of cake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, that was actually Kevin Dahlgren.
Yeah, that was
Kevin
Kevin's.
Dahlgren.
Yeah.
So it was Kevin's interview that he did, and that was amazing. So Wendy lives down a block away from the Blanchet house. And it turns out that she has like 11 siblings out of state. She came via way of Florida. She's been using drugs, just living in a tent. But that day she was pretty confident that it was a piece of cake to be out eating, doing drugs, partying, eating, doing drugs. But it's interesting, some of the people that knew her and were providing services to her got in touch with me because I had posted Kevin's stuff. We post through Instagram a lot because he's not on Instagram. So but the people that were providing service to her pulled her aside and talked with her and about that video, and a different humble Wendy emerged. She didn't seem bad on the video, but I just mean things are more dire. Kevin ended up assisting getting her family out there, which was lovely, her siblings. And so I love this story. I don't know what we're calling the woman that you helped today, what alias you'd like to use. Betsy, the one that you helped.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that if everybody just sort of, we all kind of in neighborhoods kind of adopted somebody a little bit and worked on them, whatever that looked like. And I don't mean that there's not people that aren't profoundly drug addicted and are violent. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to take that one off the table, but like, how can we start using all these resources that we supposedly have that none of us know how to get to or get into, or there's never space, or, you know, all the things. It's really frustrating.
Let me come back to meetings like this again, because in the course of helping the woman that I'm not going to name, I discovered a variety of things. If you have a SNAP card, you can buy all of the fixins for a ham and cheese sandwich, but you can't buy prepared food. So if you're living on the streets, where's the knife? Where's the plate? Where do I put the jar of mayonnaise? How do I refrigerate the cheese and the ham? So you can't go into a little store and buy prepared food. That's bizarre. The other thing is ID. The woman unnamed had no ID. And if you have no ID, you have no way to get those foundational documents that begin to trigger other stuff. So I took it upon myself to get her birth certificate and managed to track down through a variety of means her parents' names, where she was born. She was born in Washington. And so I found the church where she was baptized. I went to the priest and got him to try to convince the state of Oregon that a baptismal certificate was an official government document. I lost that fight. But I mean, he wrote on the back, this is a really important government document. But so we pieced together sort of one step at a time the mosaic of enough information. So I called Washington Vital Statistics, and they said you fill out this form. So we filled out the form, chased her around to get the form witnessed, sent money in a money order, and no birth certificate. And so I called them up and I said, I paid for it, I did all the paperwork, where's the birth certificate? And they said, well, you didn't submit the required ID. I said, of course I didn't submit the required ID, you morons, I'm asking you for the required ID. We got it. And then immediately afterwards.
After you insulted them.
Yeah. I went to a different office. Born at night, not in the dark. Anyway, but we finally got her ID. And about a week afterwards, she got it stolen. And so, important safety tip, we copy everything. But just the hurdles. I had the ID sent to one of the shelters downtown. They couldn't release it to me.
Right.
So I had to go get her to go down in the car. She was pretty skittery about getting in the car. I mean, it has been one hurdle after another, largely created by the same 90 people down in Salem that decry homelessness and say it's their first priority to fix it. Well, then stop making the goddamn rules so insurmountable.
Yes.
And bring back mental health care.
And in some cases, if people that are drug addicted or mentally ill do not make the wisest decisions about their own health care. In some cases, we may have to figure a different path.
I personally have had an example of this week, and I think when I'm just tired. I'm tired of seeing everything in this town and just going downhill. It just seems like we talk and talk and talk about it, but nothing ever happens. And personally, in my family, I had an intervention with my granddaughter this week. She's dual diagnosis. She's mentally ill, and she's drug addicted. And why? Because we allow it on our streets. You know, I had that conversation with her, and she said, well, you know, there's nothing that they can do to me, so why not? And she's mentally ill, she doesn't feel well, she's bipolar, so what does she do? She takes drugs to feel better. Now she's addicted, and now we're trying to find a facility that will take a dual diagnosis. There's nothing here.
Especially for juveniles.
So I got her in Colorado this week, got the plane tickets, she backed out. We see this, now this has just happened to me, and I know I'm kind of mad about it, I'm a little bit upset.
You should be.
But I am pissed that we are talking and talking, and Betsy, nothing seems to happen. And Measure 110 has just done nothing but allow, it perpetuates a problem that makes our young people think it's okay. You know, I had to do a wellness check this week to find out if she was alive or dead. Because the place that I found her, it scared me to death. We called the cops. They were so kind, like you said. They were so kind. They get a bad rap.
They get a terrible rap.
And they went over there and talked directly with her. But they said to my daughter, I can't do anything about it. Even if she has paraphernalia, even if this is wide open and she has it on her. We're in a bad place, and I want to know from you, what do you suggest we move forward? I mean, you were running for governor, you had some good thoughts, but quite honestly, I'm going to be pretty blunt. I didn't think you would get it because of moving from a Democrat to independent, and I thought for sure maybe we had a try at a Republican that might step forward.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And yet, you know, and I'm not being disrespectful to you.
Oh, I don't take it as disrespectful.
But it just seems like it just robbed the race. And now we're left with trying to make some sort of, and I'm sorry, I guess I'm upset.
I am going to push back on you on one thing, and that was the notion that I deprived Christine of being elected.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that we have, in this community, have just been, we see the most of it, quite frankly. I was a block away from my own. The lady was murdered. This is like, I've been in this community 25 years. It's just not getting better. And we're frustrated, yet we still are trying every which way to show compassion, to meet together, to talk about it. And I appreciate you being here tonight. I really do. I don't want you to think that we're blaming it on you, but I guess I personally have experienced coming from a situation that's personally devastated our family.
Well, and as we're sitting here talking tonight, there is a group of people down at the legislature that are trying to quote-unquote fix one. You
I
can't
pray
fix.
to God they do.
Well, they're not gonna fix it, they
No.
just wanna push money out to people that are gonna open up not-for-profits. And one of the things I said when I was campaigning was that I was familiar with a not-for-profit that wanted to, hold the sacred feather to get over your heroin addiction. That ain't gonna work. And there was no, as best I could tell, demonstration of efficacy in people's techniques to try to cure folks. One of the things that Governor Kotek was critical about Helping Hands was that Helping Hands is high barrier. So if you go into Helping Hands and you use or you drink, they're gonna kick you out. And because the lack of accountability for the residents there proliferates this ability to continue to
Well, the
use.
DA proliferates.
Oh,
it.
the DA.
He's not helping that situation
He has
at all.
got to go. There's just no reason.
When are you starting the recall effort?
Nothing will change until he's gone.
Recall?
Yeah. Carl Vincent.
Okay.
It's not more radical than first.
Let me start off with this. Folks, I drove up here from Lebanon. I don't live here anymore, but I'll tell you this. I grew up, my house was on 50th in Flavelle. I went to school up from 1st grade to 7th grade at Holy Family at 39th in Flavelle. We got out of here in 1990. My mom and dad got us the hell out of this town. And I'm so grateful because they took us to Bend. From there, I went into the Navy. Came back, Bend doubled on me in 4 years. I could no longer live in Bend because I could never ever afford it. So we've gone misplaced
California.
by folks that come in with a lot of money. So there's that. I've been kicked down the road. I chose a career in social services. I worked for the Oregon Employment Department. I saw what a shit show that place was. I left after 5 years. Eventually I made my way to, let's just say, 2 nonprofits. I worked in social work for 23 years off and on. St. Vincent de Paul, Catholic Community Services. They both ran programs that were wet housing. They wanted to put everybody and let them do their drugs, let them do their alcohol. We just need to put them in housing. And it was failing. I worked in mental health. I worked in for people with intellectual developmental disabilities that have behavioral issues. I've spent 9 or 10 years in security work. I work down at a bar. I come up from Lebanon to work in Portland because no one will work down in Portland. I work as a security guard. I'm an executive manager. I have my own company, security company now, but it's down on Yamhill in the central industrial district, or right at the railroad tracks.
That's a real nice place for
Yeah, I get to find needles all the time, and like I said, and then I just had this little officer guy come around and say, oh yeah, we're here to help them with the homeless and all that kind of stuff, and they sneak into the club, or someone lets them in and all that kind of stuff, and they piss and pee themselves all over our dance floor and all that kind of stuff. So I've dealt with this. I'm just, how do I do this? Like I said, again, with the wet housing, with how much money we have thrown at our social services, and even they say that they're so good and they don't want to do this, they're really not. And I'm so frustrated. Like I said, I got out of the system. My father has been working, and this is why I got invited by Shar. I am representing my father, Brian, who's over in Bend, who's trying to build he just got 10 acres donated to him outside the city limits, but it's in that urban or
growth boundary.
outside the farm zone, or what it EFU. Yeah. So we don't know if we can get that on, but he has a plan. But right now, and Deschutes County is going to get 14 million. But sounds like Shar is that he might get pushed out, or his idea, even though they told him he's the furthest developed. He has land, he has everything, he has the plan. But it sounds like everybody else in the social services world is going to get all that money and spend it, because they're going to spend it on, we need a plan, we need to hire these consultants and all this kind of stuff. And he's not getting anywhere, and he's so frustrated right now, he's about to give up, and I'm telling him don't, but damn it, guys, like I said, we're spending all this money, telling people that, want to do stuff with the community, but really, they're just a bunch of shysters that just, and then they don't pay their people any money, that work for them. So I have all these things that are stabbing at me, and I can tell you all these stories from 23 years of doing security, doing social work, of how screwed up this place is. And I'm a 5th generation Oregonian. Tired of this crap. I just drove up here through all the homeless crap up here, and and it's not any better than normal. My grandfather is buried up here at Mount Scott. This is my home. And I know we talked. You and I know we've been on the other side of the fishing issues. Remember how you and I
You got right in my face.
Yes, and about veterans issues, which your staff never answered me, so I flipped a few votes. So my apologies, but your staff never got back to me. But that's a personal issue. Don't worry.
That's in the past.
You and I, we can work on stuff. And I
We're all
told you that
gonna
before.
disagree about everything.
Okay?
I'm not going to let you sit here and say I'm an anti-veteran. I'm
No.
sitting here because of 2 people who wear the uniform of this country in WW2.
Yeah. It was the funding for the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs with the money that you had in the budget. Either way, let's not talk about that. We're here to talk about homelessness. So like I said,
Well, not all. No,
I think-
I got other issues.
okay. So I don't know. And I'll add in if you'll let me be a part of your community, because like I said, this is my home. This is where I grew up. So, thank you.
Does your father have, I don't want to casework this stuff here, but does your father have any pathway to get a champion over to Deschutes County? I grew up in Redmond.
I don't know. Tony DeBone is a no, and the only one is the out of the 3 is Patty Adair and DeBone. And trust me, we know DeBone because we've worked. Let's say we just the equivalent of Hood to Coast. That's my family. We did that. So Lapine knows us. Tony DeBone knows us. Knows my father. But like I said, only Chang will work with him, and we need 2 out of the 3 votes to do something.
Okay.
But that's the same thing that you're having up here. Is the problem of not getting enough of, or that Multnomah County is fighting City of Portland. City of Bend is fighting the City of Deschutes County. One last thing, Shari knows this, is my father actually came to the Senate and to, who's the guy out of, the Senate Judiciary Committee out of Eugene. Prozansky. Yeah, thank you. Prozansky has said no, that he won't put up a bill to do the thing where they have the oversight of the DAs. So he has a plan from the state of New York. We would be the 2nd state in the nation to have an oversight committee over our DAs, and the legislature will not take that issue up. So they shot him down. What's the vice chair is, she's a Republican. Who? Thatcher. She just told him it's not going to fly because of Prozansky and because there's other people there.
Well, I'll give you a little secret of the legislature. The anti-DA, anti-cop attitude in the legislature is palpable.
Right.
And one of the other things that you guys should do is all of you've got a state rep and all of you've got a senator. And they were out before the election looking for votes, and I hope you went to their town halls and held them accountable for it. They're going to be back out again doing town halls. They're about midway through the session at this point. But the anti-cop attitude is just breathtaking.
Yeah.
And anti-concealed handgun license holders. They're anti-gun. Like I said, I hold a CHL. Now I'm not going to be able to be in an area adjacent to a gun-free zone. I'll be charged with the crime if I carry my weapon. Like I said, there are things like that. There's this Bill 348 that's going through. Senate Bill 2005 that they rolled 2005, 2006, and 2007 into it. All this stuff. So you're also talking gun rights and people that are trying to protect themselves. They want to make sure that you aren't able to legally carry, or that you're going to be prosecuted more than the people that are actually doing the crimes.
Right.
Okay? So that rolls into it. I'll shut up.
Maybe one other thing that's different about Lents and Ben, right? Gun rights here look a little different than they do in Bend or in, let's say, Eastern Oregon.
No, I just want to bring my firearm up to Portland.
But what I'm talking about is here, we got people getting murdered in the streets. We got people carrying broadswords on their back. The more weapons is more mayhem to us.
No, I disagree.
I would disagree. And as a licensed
I know, I remember
professional,
him.
like I said, with 18 years of experience, I have a different opinion.
The homeless people that live across the street from me for the last 3 years carry all these things. I walk out of my house, back of my garage, with my weapon in my hand, my finger on the trigger every single time I walk out. Because I've got people across the street that don't belong there, that shouldn't be there, that have my whole neighborhood in fear, living in fear and terror.
Yeah,
And you're telling me that I can't protect myself?
Yeah, no.
You're the problem.
I'm not saying that at all. What makes sense from an individual's point of view, their own personal space and all, creates mayhem in the community at large when it gets to this density. In Eastern Oregon, or small towns, everybody knows each other, there's more space. It's a different world than here.
Again, I've got people
Right?
across
We can't
my
apply
house
this.
with bats, with machetes,
I
with
believe you.
knives.
And if I
How do I
were you, I'd
defend
have that
myself?
weapon too. If I were you, I would have that weapon too. But that doesn't mean it ain't gonna add to the mayhem.
But see, 2005 is going to make me a criminal for the place that I need to carry the most, because I don't need to conceal carry in Lebanon, Oregon. I don't need to conceal carry in Bend, but I sure as hell need to conceal carry in Portland, Oregon.
As part of
And but yet I'm going to be no, I can't even carry a
Do you
weapon.
boys mind if I
as
ask
a-
Betsy a question?
as a-
Do you boys mind if I ask Betsy a question?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, I mind.
So Betsy, my guess is, I haven't asked you this question before, but my guess is, like, you ran for governor because a lot of people were like, you should run, and you were upset about the problems like us. But you know more levers in this state than we do. So looking at what we're dealing with in terms of crime, you know, the filth, the urban blight on the street, people that are mentally ill, profoundly ill out there with drugs, where do you think, because, you know, somebody was yelling recall, and I've kind of gone down that road. I've gone down the lawsuit road. I've, you know, raising funds for that. I've gone down that, okay, the legislature has to repeal, or we have to get signatures on a ballot for, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, all this stuff is time and money expensive. I don't know if everybody knows that. Lawsuits cost money, recalls cost money, because it's not just the recall, it's getting the new person so people know their name, it's getting somebody in place. I mean, all this stuff costs money, unfortunately. That's what I woke up to. So my question is to you is, I think we are organized. Like we are very, I mean, Lents Livability was doing this before most neighborhoods. And I know this because I met them 7 years ago. And I'm really, and what's horrible is that they've been doing so much work, and it's actually gotten worse in this neighborhood. And so my question to you is, I know you're a strategy lady, I know this about you, so where do you see that our pressure points need to be?
The problem is that some of the pressure points have been arbitrarily taken away. The fact that the Capitol remains generally locked down. I mean, they're in there doing public policy without the public.
Yeah.
I went to the Capitol last week because I was still trying to unscrew one of my old constituents who's just getting screwed. And it's just not in my nature to let go of his hand. And even though I'm not his senator anymore, I was able to convene 3 state agencies to come down and talk to this guy. But I hadn't been in the Capitol. And this is hardly the people's house anymore. You have to go through a metal detector, and I have a little tiny knife on my key ring. I mean, it's just a little baby knife. And
I need to upgrade for Portland, Betsy.
Yeah. And we got into a big tussle about the knife. And it is a very unfriendly place. My point is that nothing elected people like less. How many of you have ever held elective office? Anybody? Nothing elected people like less than a room full of pissed off people that are there to hold them accountable and ask questions. The legislature has abused Zoom to the point that if you were testifying and the chair agreed with your point of view, well then please, madam, take 15 minutes.
And then
But-
there's a mic malfunction.
Yeah, or, can you hear me, can you hear me? Or you're afforded 90 seconds, or whatever it is that the chair deems, how little time they want to give an opposition point of view. I have watched on the television, I haven't been to a Portland City Council meeting in a long time. I know you go with regularity. But there's an attempt always to muzzle people there. And I'm not making a case that people shouldn't be respectful, but I think they've rigged the agenda to the point that there's not much public comment. Letters to the editor are particularly annoying to elected folks if you're calling them out. Now, will the Oregonian print letters to the editor that are critical of electeds in this city? I don't know the answer to that.
You guys send them to me, I'll put them up.
Yeah. Tell them a little bit about Portland Real, just so they know who you are. A lot of people in this
Yeah,
room know.
I think
but-
there's a lot of people in the room that I know. So I've known Sharon David 7 years, right?
At least,
And
yeah.
so I live in Mount Tabor, but I'm on the border of Montevilla. My name's Angela Todd. So I've been in this fight for a while. I've been trying to get more and more effective. And my most recent thing is since the end of June, I started just talking about what's going on from a community perspective, community reporting by the community. And so we've grown to over 60,000 people on 3 platforms, but our main one is at Instagram. So we do things like people send me video, I do interviews. I haven't filmed a whole lot tonight, but like I'll talk about tonight. And also we talk about policies and why they affect certain things. So some of it's education and some of it's stories. And I literally started it because I thought I saw things like Lents built and we built in my neighborhood. It wasn't nearly big enough. And I was wondering how to get people more connected. I don't think that social media is going to resolve anything. I don't think that's where our work is. However, I can tell you that I don't go very many places anymore without being recognized. So I can tell you that millions of people see my content or the content that I put out with the community. I'm just the voice. And that's cool. Because I think what needs to happen is we need to have a lot of conversations about how people are being harmed. I'm tired of talking to people in certain areas of the city that don't know what's happening to you, Todd.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm sick of it. So it makes me really mad. And I've always kind of stood up to bullies. So that's sort of what drives me. Because I really feel like this stuff is bullying people. And so I'm all for holding people accountable. And we've had some movement on stuff, which has been great. We use, I try nice first. Always try nice first, but we definitely shame situations that the city and the county is doing. So I'm open to stories here. So that's what, I'm just trying to be helpful. And next time I'm really working on this, getting D.A. Schmidt out. So.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, I think you should go to her sites and get educated, throw the Oregonian away. This is where the news is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that Angela can't. I'll come right back to you for a second. Just the same way that you started your meeting by talking about the fact that these kind of convocations aren't free. Somebody paid for the coffee, somebody paid for the crackers or the cookies. Angela has been doing this at her expense. And if somebody felt inclined, send her a check. Right now, this is a powerful mouthpiece that I don't know how many of you were in the room, she's got almost 50,000 followers. And she can motivate them to be pretty damn angry. And I think sending Portland Real some money is a good thing. And I might just say, I'm not preaching to the choir here, I've sent her money. So but my money and my mouth are in the same place.
Yeah, I just want to, this has to change, and I think that it starts with, I think everybody in this room, even though we can obviously find things we disagree about, I think we're on the same page with public safety. We're on the same page with, we've got it, we have to hold people accountable, et cetera. So I think the real thing is we have a lot of people in this city that are either still saying the same talking points about they need more compassion and really in the dark about this housing first thing, and we've got to reach those people so they understand that we are not getting good results, and no, this is not happening. I'm tired of people telling me this is going on in every city in the nation. It is not. And I'm tired of people saying, well, it's not that bad, and you're really exaggerating. And it's actually hard these days. I don't hear that a lot because I'm like, well, how many stories do you have to hear? Because there's 5,000 right here. We're all making it up.
They come from LA and they come from San Francisco where this is nothing to them, like I said.
And it's not that bad when you close your door and lock it.
Angela's the real deal. I want to support her 100%.
Thank you.
So-
Appreciate that.
So I have a follow-up for Angela, and then also I have something for Betsy. But so I'm curious, do you work with People for Portland? And also you talked about the recall, which I'm very anxious for. In fact, I will circulate. So tell me more about the recall of Schmidt. I mean,
Sure.
it's
Well,
not
I'll tell
happening.
you I'll tell you where I landed, why
Okay.
we're not actively working on it. So
Well, I mean, there isn't one.
I'm gonna be rough on this of the numbers because I'm one of those people that I have to look up exact numbers. But it was a little over 60,000 signatures we would need in 90 days. Honestly, that's not that hard. That's not hard. That's 100 committed volunteers. It's 50 a week. You set the locations we could do it. I'm confident. I know the people. I'm confident about that.
Oh, okay.
The real issue is not that. The real issue is that you have to have somebody who's ready to take the spot, and you have to be able to get them elected. So 75%-ish of people in Portland voted for Mike Schmidt. There are a lot of people that have woke up, I think. None of us know what that number is. So we have to have a candidate that is going to run against him, and then we have to have that candidate funded for signage, or I don't know, are all of us going to go door to door? They got to have flyers, like something, right? And so Nathan Vasquez is who I'm getting behind. I've met with him personally. He showed up at our town hall that we had in Montebello. I don't know if you guys heard about that. We had like 250 people there a few weeks ago.
I saw that.
The mayor came, and so anyway, Nathan came. I mean, he sat there in the audience and came up and talked to a few people and talked to me, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And then he said, I kind of like to talk to you because I'm noticing what all you're covering. You have the ears of what's going on. So he works in the prosecutor's office.
Yeah.
He had very specific examples of what he would do. I'm confident that he's the guy. Anyway, most of the people that would be funding, like People for Portland, yes, I know, and yes, I've spoken with, and obviously they put up that Schmidt Show banner with their donations. They're very interested. That's one of their big initiatives is to remove Schmidt.
Right.
So he's, but the people who would be funding an election, Betsy can tell you, elections are expensive, particularly governor. Those people feel that they need these months to make sure that their money is effective at removing Schmidt. So that's where it's at. I was able to find the volunteers. It was more like the funding for the person who said they would be ready after recall. I don't want to tell you that, but I've probably spent over the last few years a lot of man hours on it, talking to people, trying to get that organized. So
My dad had multiple millionaires that wanted that done, and he had a billionaire in the group. And it kind of fell apart because the guy lost his restaurant because of vandalism and all that. He had one of those hoity-toity restaurants down in the Pearl or something like that here in Portland.
yeah,
So on my dad's project to bring the DA, so I might be able to hook you up with my dad's contacts that had the millionaires that they backed out because they knew that they couldn't win at that time. That kind of stuff because he had such a high and they didn't have someone to back it up. So
yeah. I mean, I think
there's millionaires and there's billionaires out there that want Schmidt guy gone. If you guys will band together and do it,
and I want
do it.
to also say that in speaking with Nathan, I felt very confident that this was so from some of my other contacts, because with our following, I'm starting to get calls from people who work in these departments that give me inside information or corroborate stuff. And Nathan said that, and I've seen this in the county stuff, he said they literally want the jails, of course, at 74% Inverness, most people know that.
Yeah.
he was like, they are embedded in here in the county, that they absolutely don't think that people should be incarcerated, that kind of like Betsy was talking about in the legislature. We can talk about those people, the people that are screwing us in this state and these policies, but it is a thinking problem. It is a thinking problem. And I'm sorry to be so intense, but sometimes I can't hide that I'm a redhead. But it's a thinking problem. And it is that people think that if you just throw enough freaking compassion at something, everybody's good.
No.
And it's this thinking problem that they think there's too much mom energy and not enough dad energy.
That's exactly it.
Mom says, oh, he's just a good boy. He didn't need to stab that person. He just needs it, whatever. But dad's like, no, there's consequences. And you can still love somebody. Wise love is having a community situation where, yes, we help onboard people to better lives. I don't like that felons get out and they don't get any money and they don't get a place to stay and we just expect them to figure it out. Like, that's ridiculous. I don't like that. But we have to be honest that some of these people need consequences. And frankly, the drug problem's that way too for me. You know, it doesn't have to mean you're in prison for the rest of your life, but I mean, like, you know, can you have a consequence for drugs?
An adjustment.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel like I might have went off into something real quick, but I'm saying, like, I feel that we have to figure out ways to reach people, and part of it is like, I tried to convince the people with the money about the recall, not just with the candidate. I said, look, even if we lose, we need to build coalitions. That's so important. So you said, oh, well, I knew these people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, see, I mean, a few years ago, the guy for People for Portland, Dan, said to me the other day, and I laughed at him. He said, well, we were doing this 2 years ago. There's all kinds of you popping up. I'm glad you finally I'm glad to find you. I'm glad you got involved. And I said, Dan, I was involved in this 7 years ago, pissed off. I just got effective so you can find me. I mean, 3 years ago, I met with your PR person and nobody would tell me who was running the show. And then 2 months ago, because I'm big enough, y'all got in touch with me and you want to meet. Like, that's what's going on. But that's when I said you just get effective over time. I mean, that's why, because I'm trying to find all the big people that make things happen and I don't even know who they are. So it's like, all right, let's build it. And then they'll come to us. So that's what I'm trying to help with. I'm not gonna be the person who, resolves all this. But when this is done, and I believe this stuff's spreading past Oregon, but when this is done and we save this, and there's like a big long book, I'll at least be in the footnotes. That's all I care about. You know what I mean?
We need funding. We need funding.
That's great.
We need funding.
Yeah.
Okay, so Betsy, one of the things that I'm really bothers me is the state has all this extra money. Have you guys heard how much we're going to get next year on the what do they call it?
The kicker?
Yeah, the kicker. I mean, we have all this extra money, the state, and now they're trying to, I'm changing the subject, but now they're trying to put tolls on our freeways to get more money, which drives me crazy since we already pay gas tax and we pay high car registration fees. It's like, well, property tax, that's a given. But it's like, what can we do? I mean, I don't know if you were involved in getting these tolls, allowing these tolls with the state ODOT, but.
You guys need to know each other if you don't.
I already met.
Okay, all right. My role in the tolls was when the bill 2017 came through. That was the big transportation package.
Yeah, way back, right.
Was to authorize the study of tolls. ODOT has now stretched the elasticity of that language to the point that it says the legislature broke our arm up our back and we have to do tolls. That's horseshit.
House Bill 2055 in the 21 session.
2055?
Mm-hmm. That's the one where ODOT, legislature gave ODOT authority to toll all Oregon highways.
I just heard a news article on the way home tonight that basically ODOT has said you get tolls whether you need the money or not.
Yeah,
Well,
the
the Abernathy Bridge, for example, I was still in the
I drive that
legislature.
every day.
And we were getting money from the COVID relief, I mean, a lot of it. And my argument was just buy the Abernathy Bridge, just pay for it. And that was before this hyperinflation and the cost of construction went up. Nobody wanted to talk about that at all. I think that with enough activists around trying to get tolling on the ballot, that's going to happen. You're circulating petitions right now, are you?
We are, but from what I understand, a lot of this was.
There's one right there.
got one here.
Pass it around.
Speak of the devil. With the manifestation of this was Governor Brown, Governor Kotek's plan, or pledge to make Oregon carbon neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Oregon will not build more roads, they said, in the name of environmentalism. They're just gonna make you drive less.
Well, driving over here today, I came to a little market that I just learned about during the campaign. How many of you guys have been to the Roman Russian market?
On
Division?
On Division, Fatima.
Fatima.
What a great place that is. And if you're dying for fabulous pastries, I mean, your pant size can go up to standing in there looking at them. But God, what a mess Division is. You can't turn. And just in the time that I was waiting to get a parking spot, I was watching people make U-E's and driving across the cement. $200 million that nobody wanted. To accommodate bicyclists. We want to accommodate.
Don't ride it.
Yeah, we want to accommodate bicyclists on I-5. That's for freight and cars. You're not bringing home a washing machine on a bicycle on I-5. But it is this Kotek Brown carbon neutral. I'm an old lady. I'm not going to go to the grocery store on a bicycle. It just isn't going to happen.
They just said bicycle ridership has gone down, I think it's 37% in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, they won't.
Because your bicycle can get stolen right after they mug you.
Yeah.
My colleagues and I were gathering petitions for IP4 signatures at both the Portland Roadster Show and the PIR swap meet. Rather than pay the $12 or whatever it was to get in and park, I urged some of the people, I said, park up by Interstate Fred Meyer, ride down on the Max. They rode on the Max and they said it was one of the most disgusting experiences of their life.
And dangerous if there are people smoking fentanyl. You all asked what you could do about this.
Yeah.
We have just been joined by a friend of mine. This is Julia Brim-Edwards. Julia has been a fixture in the Portland political scene. Julia, come on in.
Come sit up, my friend Betsy, so I can
There's a chair up here if you want.
Yeah,
or
there's
you can
some
sit over
chairs
there,
here.
whatever you want.
Let me just quickly run over what we've been talking about. The tragedy of the paucity of juvenile beds for drug-affected or mentally ill young people, homelessness a lot, what to do about it, how do groups like this empower themselves to actually make change, not just come together and talk about it. We've talked about what a joke ballot measure 110 is, how we're enriching consultants and not getting people off the streets. We've talked about some gun bills and there was not a unanimity of opinion here. We then moved on to talking about the DA and how bad he is, and you pretty much walked in the door. I may have missed a few things that we talked about.
That's pretty good, Betsy.
Tolls.
Oh, tolls. We've been just moving on to tolls. But Julia is running for the county commission in this neck of the woods.
Oh, there we go.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Julia Brim-Edwards. I've known Betsy for, 30s?
Probably.
My dad and her mom were longtime friends.
Yeah.
And so I'm running for the county commission because I think the county's on the wrong track. And I grew up in East Portland. I live in the house I grew up in. My mom lives across the street. I went to public schools. I got my first jobs. I berry picked in East County, worked at Creston Pool for the summer. And my husband and I raised our 3 kids in East Portland, and I served on the Portland School Board. And I am currently still serving this Portland School Board. I've worked for Nike for 17 years, currently have my own small business. And when the county commission seat came up, we have a saying in our house, no complaining. So if you see something you don't like, my parents always told me, get out there and do something, kind of like your mom probably told you, Betsy. Get out there and do something about it, which is how I got on the school board in the first place. So I'm running for the county commission because right now the county does have a key role to play in whether The county gets back on track. They have the funding and a lot of the authority around homelessness and ending street camping. They also, as Betsy just mentioned, the district attorney, so the district attorney and also the sheriff's office is within the county's purview. And if we're going to do something about the two biggest things facing our community that are really impacting safety, affordability, and whether this is a thriving place that you'd want to raise your family or ride the max or anything else, that the county commission, we need a new direction. And so I'm running to provide that new direction. I'm not going to be somebody who's going to go along with the status quo. I think people might compare me to Betsy a little bit when public settings, in the sense of, like, I ask a lot of tough questions. I hold people accountable. I have high expectations for our public institutions. And I think right now the county's on the wrong track. It's not getting after the two biggest things that's impacting life in East Portland and East County. So I'm delighted to be
So
here.
let me ask you the question that they just asked me, because I'm just curious what your answer is. So Governor Kotek called out Multnomah County and the city of Portland for their tepid response to what they were going to do with the homeless box. Good thing, bad thing? Should she have done that? What are the ramifications of her?
I'm actually really glad she did that, because I'm super disappointed. We have a crisis in our streets. We need to be taking urgent action. And when there's state dollars available to help us with the things we need to address it, we should have, our act together. And it's disappointing that of all the places in the state that the governor had to call out Multnomah County for not having a presentation and a plan how to use the money, because it's not that we don't need it or we can't use it or there's not ways to put it, to use immediately. So I'm glad the governor did that, because this is part of the holding elected officials accountable. And I'll say, if I'm elected the county commission, and I tell this to people all the time with the Portland School Board, is like, hold me accountable for what I say I'm going to do. And so anyway, I actually left the governor a phone message saying that I was glad that she did that.
Well, and one other thing that's valuable about meetings like this, our exchange is sticking with me. I'm going to paraphrase, and you stop me if I start lying about something. This woman has just done an intervention with a teenage granddaughter. Could not find a juvenile bed for somebody with a dual diagnosis of mental illness exacerbated by drug addiction.
There was no facility that could accommodate her
Here
in this town.
So found a place out of state, booked the airline ticket. The daughter backed out at the last minute. But the reason I'm doing this is Julia can get the governor on the phone. And her family was involved in healthcare for a long time, and so now you have a conduit to tell your story to. And instead of talking to people who, Tina's not going to call me back. She sure as hell will call Julia back, and you now have the opportunity to lift this up to the CEO of the state of Oregon and say, this is completely unacceptable. So you guys ought to exchange information.
Sure.
You now have a conduit to the governor through this woman.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I am too, because my family are in healthcare. My son-in-law is an ICU nurse. We have contacts, but no one can help us. And the law is not a good law here in town. There's no consequences to using here in this town. So our young people think that it's okay, but it leads to other things.
The other thing I want to tell you is for 20 years I did constituent relations, and we were damn good at it. My office, I think Democrats...
Legendary, I think, is what people would say.
Democrats or Republicans would tell you we set the gold standard in taking care of constituents. And the number of times that I had hospitals, and I had 3 hospitals in my district, call me and say, we have a juvenile. Somebody has brought, in the last case that I did, somebody has brought her to the ER at Astoria, Columbia Memorial Hospital, completely out of control, and no bed would take her. The only way that I finally got her a bed after 4 days was because I knew the CEO of Legacy and managed to con them into taking a violent, disruptive, mentally ill female juvenile. That shouldn't be the case, especially our kids. But you guys need to exchange
I
information.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and the county's responsibility, it is the local mental health authority. And but if you talk to people, whether it's social workers or outreach workers, they'll tell you there's no detox beds, there's no sobering center.
Nope.
Unless you get somewhere first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock, you may not get in for any sort of treatment or recovery. And
Yet we have all this money,
Yeah.
all this money.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, one of the things that I'm going to pledge to do is work really closely with the city, because the city and the county do have a fair amount of money. And the other place where there's just no coordination, or you'd think we'd be able to place people, is, and you see this sometimes when sweeps happen and the people say, well, I was never offered shelter. And it's like, well, how could that be? Well, the reality is there's no centralized system that says, here's where a shelter bed is. So if you're an outreach worker talking to somebody who says, yeah, I want to not be camping on the street, I want to go someplace where there's actually showers and bathrooms and, some services, there's no centralized place. The social worker has to literally call each of the shelters to see if there's spots. And if it's after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, forget it.
Yeah, so it's a long ordeal for them to find a bed.
Yeah, so we need much better systems. I will say, I've worked in big public institutions, whether it was Portland Public Schools, I worked for the U.S. Senate and at Nike. So I've worked in large systems, and I've seen how large systems can be effective. And I think the county is lacking a lot of systems.
Is it on purpose?
I don't think so. I think people, for example, people are working really hard. For a social worker, for example, think about them spending, an hour and a half calling all these shelters. They're passionate and they're committed about taking care of people, but there's no system, so they're wasting their time. It's pretty ineffective to be, making one call versus having some sort of platform where it shows, like, hey, there's 3 beds over here, 2 here.
Yeah, simple.
But that tells us that the administration are not doing their job. The social workers, the people on the street, the cops on the street, they're involved, they're doing the right thing, but the system, which are politicians and administrators, the brightest, best and brightest are supposed to be setting up.
It's not existing.
They can do it if they want to do. They do not want to.
Let's
They
go
do
back
not
to
want
this
to.
gentleman. I interrupted him when Julia came in.
Well, it seems so simple to me. 211 is set up for social service assistance.
It doesn't.
It's
like it's a waste of a phone call.
I need social work.
Well, I don't know. I volunteer at one of the agencies that he mentioned earlier, but we use 211 a lot.
Do you?
Yeah, and we get a lot of referrals from 211. Why can't they just put the central for beds on that, or, on
Well,
that?
the interesting thing is, the city developed an app and a platform, and the county decided for whatever reason, not to use it. So the cities, they only have like 100 shelter beds, and the county has something like 1,800.
Yeah.
And so they're not using it, and for whatever reason. But to me, it's like the frontline workers. I really do. They're wanting to provide service. And when somebody says, the moment they say, I want treatment, I want to go to a shelter, like, if we miss that moment, it may not come again.
But Julia, it still isn't going to work, because to show you how broken the system is, there's a coffee shop owner downtown. She had a young man coming into her facility and said that he wanted to get off the streets. So she doesn't have any place to call. She calls a former senator, me, and says, you know something about shelter beds, what can you do about it? I got the guy placed, and because he brought contraband in with him and was high and threatened the staff, they tossed him out. But it's broken when a coffee shop owner is calling a former politician to say we've got to place somebody, and we've got hundreds of millions of dollars sloshing around in downtown Portland. Something's screwed up.
Yeah.
But we do have Portland Street Response, and they can show up and give them a bottle of water and a snack.
A snack. Or they throw
That's
it out
it.
the door.
Well,
They don't even stop. They just throw it out.
But we're 51st in funding in the nation in mental health. We're 51st.
Well, one of the things with the Metro Supportive Housing Services tax, which provides a lot of resources for Multnomah County, can go for mental health issues. So there are resources.
Good, yeah.
So can I ask what position you're running for? You said East County. Who are you running against?
Yeah, so the way the county commission works is there's a chair and then there's 4 commissioners, and the county's divided up into 4 districts, and it's District 3 is, so the person who was formerly in District 3 is now the county chair. When she became the county chair, it opened up this seat. So this is a special election. There is, essentially the district is kind of 32nd, 35th is the western border. I'm sorry, I have a bad sense of direction. Anyway, it's the western border. The eastern border is about 146th. The southern border is the Clackamas County line, and the northern border is I-84. So it's essentially East Portland, mostly southeast, a little bit of northeast, a little bit of Park Rose, but all within the city of Portland. And it's a very contested race. I'm running against somebody who used to work for the county, who is not talking about the same issues that I am, just has a different viewpoint.
She's anti-police and doesn't talk about public safety at all.
When is the special? Is it in May or when is it?
It's May
Oh,
16th, so the ballots will go out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's going to be a close, I think it'll be a close race. It's going to be fairly low turnout, so, but I'm working hard.
And I have a call into you about helping with signs.
I'll knock on doors and
Does the,
give people the
does
vote.
the county have the runoff thing if you don't get 50%?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And
Well, that's
I'm just going to
helpful.
say, like, as a small business person, I'm going to try and win it all in May because when I'm campaigning, I'm
Also, it's important to say this too, so Diane Rosenbaum is in that spot, kind of is almost like, no offense to her, but kind of lame duck. Everybody who's talked with her is like, she's just placeholder. She's been retired for 10 years. So if we don't get Julia in, if over 51% are over, then we're gonna have to deal with that through November.
Is Rosenbaum one of the candidates?
No.
Good, because I served with her in the legislature. She was our majority leader. And if you want more of the same and somebody that thinks that it's okay, that's Diane.
Right.
And this Della, what's her?
Anna Della Rosia.
I don't know her other than by reputation. Very anti-cop, and we've been talking about the need for public service. So if I were voting in this district, I'd vote for her, but go ahead. Anyway, we've cut you off now about 6 times.
No, I appreciate that because I wasn't aware that we had an open seat.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's good to know.
I want to ask you, when they bring up this housing first, where are you on that?
Housing first. So I don't think that's going to solve the problem because if you look at the rate that new housing is coming online, it's going to be
Years.
maybe a decade before
Years.
everybody
Yes.
gets done. So I think we need to do 2 things. I do think we need to continue to build affordable housing. I mean, that needs to continue to happen. And we need to work with the city to create more different types of shelters so that we can start moving people off the street. Because of the Supreme Court, because of the court case,
Right.
you can't just move people off the street if there's no shelter space.
Right.
So, and you know, I think this city has put forth some plans that will help us end street camping, and I think the county needs to be a partner in that.
And they're not in agreement, are they?
They haven't been to date. They've kind of a little bit of a not a
Are you
stiff
strong
arm.
enough to stand up to that? 'Cause
I will tell you, yes.
Okay.
I was trying to think how to put it. Like I'm a former athlete, a collegiate and high school athlete. And I know how to get my elbows out. I'm also totally unafraid to be the single no vote. And I've done this time and time again on the Portland School Board when I felt like I needed to take a stand. And often when one person says, I'm not going to go along with it, everybody else all of a sudden realizes like, oh, well maybe, why aren't you voting for that? And really turn the tide. But I'm unafraid to do that. And on the as I've been out talking to people, I've also been really clear that I am not afraid to get my elbows out. I think we need to partner with the city and the county. I know all the county commissioners, I know all the city commissioners, and I've worked productively with them, but I also, when I have a point of view, nobody's gonna run me over.
What about Metro? Can we get Metro? I mean, they're a big problem. They've got a lot of money, and they're doing nothing.
Oh, I
Can you
will
guys-
disagree with you. They're doing lots of stuff
Well,
and it
yeah.
ain't good. That's kind of what we're at.
Can we be tied in?
Your income tax,
Can we tie Metro in and?
natural income tax.
Well, I'm not quite sure as a county commissioner how I would use something Metro. You know, I mean, one of the things that, I mean, we're all voters. The most important thing we can do is engage in the democratic process. I'm glad to see everybody here tonight talking about the issues that really are top of mind for everybody in the community. But, you know, we all get to vote. I don't know who the Metro counselor for this area is.
No idea.
I should know because I get his emails.
I just know they have a lot of money, and like Betsy said, they do a lot, but it's.
Oh, they're doing such dumb stuff. I represented a farmer out in Banks, and Metro decided they were going to reclaim a swamp, and so they did. And they have invited beaver in, and these beaver are making the swamp bigger and bigger and bigger, and it is encroaching on the farmer's land. And I dragged Catherine Harrington, who's the Washington County Chair, when she was on Metro, to come out and see this mosquito bog that they've created. And her answer was basically, they don't care.
I don't think the government cares about us. I mean, that's the bottom line, and we've got to change that by getting people like Julia.
You really do.
Period.
We all do.
Period.
We all do.
Yeah.
I think that Tina Kotek, personally, in my opinion, is she hasn't made always great decisions that I've liked, but that decision to call out the county and the city, that was amazing.
It was.
Like, seriously, like, I called her too, I left a message too. I mean, I don't probably have the same phone number you have, but, but I still made sure that, you know, because I'm first to be critical, so, you know, the thing is that if enough people are asking for accountability and metrics, they will start producing. And some people said to me recently, oh, they're just shining us on. They're not going to show us accountability and metrics. And it's like, well, keep moving, keep doing it, because eventually, like, we'll get what we want. You know?
Julia, when they asked me that question, I said I was for the accountability piece of it, but I also was concerned that it has exacerbated and accelerated the beef between the city and the county, and now united the city and the county to have a beef with the governor. And if you're elected, I hope that you could do whatever you can to try to bridge this divide between the city and the county. Watching the city come up with something and Deborah Kafori jump up and go, that's a shitty idea. And then the county comes up with something and the city jumps up and says, that's a bad idea. People are frustrated and angry and believe government is not working for them when that feud is going on.
Yeah, there can't be this like pointing fingers at each other like it's their fault, because if we're going to solve these problems, it's going to be the county and the city working together, taking urgent action, and holding ourselves accountable. But if it's just, you know, hey, the city, they've got their act together, but the county doesn't, or they're both doing their own things, it's not going to work. They need to have, I mean, they have a similar set of resources. I mean, they're trying to serve the same people. And I know, just because I've been out talking to a lot of people, that, believe me, no matter what neighborhood you go in, people are frustrated about neighborhoods not being safe, about the graffiti, the vandalism, you know, local small businesses. I mean, I was down on 7th Division before I came out here, and just driving out here, it's like, it's heartbreaking as somebody who grew up in East Portland, just to see all the I mean, brand new buildings, just all graffitied over, you know, broken boarded up windows.
Yeah.
It's like, so I know that whether you're in a liberal, you know, democratic neighborhood or like a less, you know, a more conservative one, people's views are very aligned right now. And I think it's a huge opportunity because no matter where I go, the top 2 issues people talk to me about are homelessness and like neighborhood safety and, you know, what's happening to local businesses.
First and foremost, thank you for your service, and for anybody else who was in the military or law enforcement. Thank you, thank you. Just so you understand where I'm coming from, I worked on both of the Recall Sam Adams campaigns. I never thought I would agree with him about anything, but I do agree with these huge plots of land to put the homeless there. where they would have electricity and water, and they could take showers, they would have cooking facilities, there would be counselors there to help them, then they earn the privilege of moving into housing, whether it's one of the tiny houses or whatever it is. I don't understand, people look at that and they think, well, that's like a concentration camp. Do you really think that them being on the street with nothing and being moved every few weeks, whatever, that is a better life than being in a controlled, somewhat controlled environment?
The only nuanced response that I would give to your comment is that there has to be some authority to keep law and order among the people that are living there, or they begin preying on each other, or the criminal element that is homeless then turns a bunch of other people into drug dealers inside these encampments. There has got to be the ability to toss somebody for bad behavior or open flagrant drug use, and I just don't know whether uber compassionate Portland would deliver on that.
Well, so it's a really an interesting question, and I appreciate you raising this because, I mean, I don't think it's compassionate at all. If you look at the 2021 statistics, the domicile unknown, where you had 193 people who just died on the streets.
Yeah.
Like, that's not compassionate. And if you look at the proposal that Sam Adams put together, it's based on some other cities that have done this, and actually people who live in those places say that they actually are safer. And they get basic services, they can start to access treatment, they can get some mental health supports. And there's also, it'll be interesting in the next couple of weeks, the Urban Alchemy, which is the vendor, the organization that's gonna run for the city of Portland. Their contract's gonna come up. And I was talking to Sam the other day, and he said you should look at it, because that's what you should insist on for any county-based site. So as you might know, the county's putting sites around a lot in actually East Portland, outer East Portland, but without a lot of public process. And in the contract with Urban Alchemy, there's some very clear, it's like an Uber good neighbor agreement for the safety of the people within the encampment, the sanctioned camping place, and also for the neighbors around it. Versus the county agreements they have, it's like 150 feet, or it's not that far. And so I think before everybody prejudges and says these are going to be bad things, first they should talk to the people who have been in these, who most of them uniformly say, well, first of all, they feel safe there, and they do have access to services. So it's a great point, and this is a place where I think the county needs to lean into the idea from the city, and not just like it's a bad idea because it came from the city, but really lean into it, because there's no way we're going to build enough affordable housing and have enough housing units for the 5,000 people who are currently on the streets anytime soon.
So this would be something in the meantime to get them to that point.
It's like, think about it as a continuum. So you might have safe parks, you might have these sanctioned campsites, you might have the motel conversions, some more traditional shelters, but you have a whole host of them. So you start moving people from the streets where they're not getting any services, and frankly, a lot of them are victims of crime, and moving into a much more stable, safer environment. And that sets a lot of these people up to then take the next step to be ready for supportive housing, to go back to work. I mean, how could you go to a job if you don't have access to a bathroom, a shower? You can't sleep at night because you're worried about your personal safety. So while the county traditionally has said we're going to focus on just permanent housing. Housing first. I think the problem has overwhelmed that as a potential solution.
Julia, the other thing though, and this is me now lobbying you, hoping that you're going to get elected, is that there need to be navigators. Because some of these people, given their mental illness or their drug dependency, are not good advocates for themselves. They don't know how to function and accomplish even the smallest things, like getting an Oregon ID or something like that. And those navigators right now, as I understand it, are coming by and they're the needle guys, and all they want to talk to you about is clean paraphernalia, but they don't want to talk to you about how to get access to mental health services. So we need what I would characterize as utility infielders who are making that personal contact, maybe have a regular beat, maybe have folks that they see all the time, to begin to earn their trust and move them towards a place where they could go for services.
Have you heard anything more about the crack pipes for kids bill, or whatever, the so-called Harm Reduction Act? Is that dead?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Okay.
I presume that it's dead. I can't imagine that legislative leadership would want to send any of their members home with crack pipes for kids. It's dressed up as clean paraphernalia, but let's not kid ourselves. That is enabling the continuing use. The drop dead date for bills was the beginning of last week. So if it hasn't cleared one chamber, it's gone. And I just don't remember the number. When I was in the legislature, I can tell you every one of the numbers, and God has mercifully spared me that responsibility. So I don't know. Do all of you know what OLIS is?
No.
Okay, it is the Oregon Legislative Information System.
Oh, okay.
And I'm doing this because you're taping this and you're going to send it out to your members. This is a powerful tool for Oregonians to use. So even a technical illiterate such as myself, if you Google Oregon Legislative Information System, it drops you into a real-time report out about what the legislature is doing. You can track bills by number, you can track bills by subject matter, you can get the staff reports, you can get the fiscal implications of a bill, because the bills that cost money have to have an analysis by the nonpartisan offices to say how much money it's going to cost. You can see who signed up to testify for and against it. You can get copies of that testimony if it's written. It will lead you to hear the actual recordings of the hearings. And so it is a very valuable tool.
And you can submit testimony.
Yeah, Oregon Legislative Information System. So you should avail yourself of that.
Get email from your senator and House representative, and from the committees they serve on.
And you just touched on a very good point. You should pound your legislators politely but emphatically about important stuff. For you tolling, for you access for juvenile mental health care. And ask them to answer you.
I will.
I mean, most legislators, and certainly at the federal level, you get back, dear Ms. Johnson, thank you so much for your thoughtful information on legislative matter, blah, blah, blah. We will take it under consideration, and you can reach out to our office anytime. BFD.
Yeah.
I want a real answer. What are you going to do about it? How are you?
Don't they keep track of the yays and nays? I mean, if they don't read every one of them,
Yes.
it's just, yeah.
Yes, but it's like taking potatoes and putting them in a pile. They're counting up who are the yays and who are the nays. And if you've got a big pile of yays, it's like doing a poll.
Well, I can remember my storied relationship with Congressman Earl Blumenauer when I was a delegate to the 3rd CD from the party. Yeah, that was fun. We had several shouting matches, but that's the bulk emails is what I now get from him, yeah.
When you get just a blanket email, what do? When you just get a template email reply?
I get pissed off enough that I've served with most of those guys and I know them and I call them up, call them back again. What's this dear Elizabeth crap? I wasn't Elizabeth when we were down having a beer the other night. That's my real name. But anyway, as a legislator, when I got the same email over and over and over again, at some point I'd stack them up with the potatoes and just count them because I knew what they were as soon as we looked at them. That's a pointless way to communicate. The powerful way to communicate is, I am the grandmother of a child who could not get services in this state. Those we paid attention to, and we called them back and connected with them. But to get the same email where somebody just hits send over and over and over again. First time I watched a legislator pitch those, I thought, you're throwing away constituent mail? And then I was the recipient of about 1,000 of the same things. And
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
but the most meaningful communications are calling, are writing really personal letters. Yes,
We're
sir.
showing up to provide
you're-
public comment.
Yeah, if you can get in.
If you can get in.
There are some organizations that are doing a great job. Bybee Lakes Hope Center, yes, they've gotten a crunch because of COVID and they didn't get all of the funding that they were promised. They've been very successful. The other one is My Father's House, which is for like families, maybe they got a husband, wife, and 1 or 2 kids. They can go in there. They are drug tested before they go in, and they are told if you drink or you do drugs, you're out. Then they randomly test them. One time, they're out because they've got a waiting list of people who are serious. They've done a great job. I'm a volunteer for Fort Kennedy, which is right down here on Johnson Creek Boulevard. You know them? It's a day center for homeless veterans. And when veterans get themselves straightened around, they will come back and then volunteer more. They are more of a facilitator. They do a great job. They get no government funding. It's all by fundraisers and donations, which they've got something coming up in May. Sergeant Tina was 22 years Army. She has pretty severe PTSD herself, so she understands. I don't think there's anybody in here who would dare go toe-to-toe with her. She scares me. I admire the heck out of her, but she's tough. They can come in, get something hot to eat, take a shower, drop off their dirty clothes, get some clean clothes, get a haircut. There's a lawyer that comes in pro bono. If they need help like getting a social security card or whatever it might be, they help them that way. They can get them on the steps to get housed, which was part of what I was doing, is getting donations, and then we would put together the basics for a kitchen and a bathroom. If they wanted a TV, I'd try to find a free TV for them. If they want a microwave, I'd try to find somebody that wants to donate one. We give them everything to be successful. Sometimes it works great, and sometimes it doesn't. We had one guy, they finally got him housed after a long wait. First thing he does is invite a bunch of his homeless buddies to come and visit, and they do $10,000 damage to the apartment. So now he's out and probably can't get housed again because that's going to be on his record with the county. So there are organizations that do a really good job. They need more help, and anybody wants to go cut hair, they need a volunteer for that.
What's the name of the organization?
Fort Kennedy.
Fort Kennedy, yeah.
They're down at 7600 Southeast Johnson Creek Boulevard.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at Blanchet House the other day, and that's all privately funded. They have, it's called a high barrier, which is like no drugs. But they're very focused on people in treatment and recovery, also getting employment opportunities, and they may start just with serving the meals and then graduate into other employment. So there are some great things happening in the community. People have to want to access them, and the high barrier treatment is not everybody's willing to go into that.
I'm about to lobby you again, though. When you're elected, the high barrier guys need to get money as well.
Yeah.
And Tina has not wanted to give the high barrier guys money.
Well, it's interesting because Blanchet, I was just there last week, they have always had this model of, it sounds like maybe that, like, if you take public money, there's a lot of conditions and how you run your program. And so they've been very successful forever. They've had a relationship with some of the Catholic, they're not a Catholic organization, although they engage in sort of the Catholic sort of public service principles. But they've always had like buses of kids from Jesuit or Central Catholic who go serve breakfast in the morning and lunch. So they have very successfully function without public dollars. And it sounds like so maybe there are some that wants it, like Bybee Lakes probably could use
Bybee Lakes was basically told, don't ask for any of this money that the legislature's just passed because you want you're not housing first, and you're high barrier.
And you're in a former
And
jail.
I just wanted to sort of follow up on what this young lady was saying.
No, thank you.
Fort Kennedy is an awesome organization. I'm very familiar with it, and we make donations to it from my local parish. But yeah, they don't take any government money, and the place that they have is donated by someone that owns property right across the street, which is Terry Emmert. But he donates the location for them, but it's an excellent organization, and we make referrals of veterans, homeless veterans, to Fort Kennedy, but they're a great organization. And
Well,
it's pretty
police
close.
officers know about it too, and if
Yeah.
they pick somebody up, they'll get them to Fort
Over
Kennedy.
there, yeah, if they're a veteran.
So if anybody wants to know where about, just go on to www.fortkennedy.org.
Written out, F-O-R-T Kennedy.
Yeah.
She is an absolutely awesome woman. I would hope everybody could meet her. She just can't say enough good things about her. She cares so much.
I may be showing my age or whatever, but has anybody ever thought about having the poor farms? Because like they did out in Troutdale, I mean, they were counseled, they were dry, they grew their own crops, and now the farmer's market is the biggest thing out. They could help pay for them, you know, it was just a win-win situation, is my understanding. And,
Ivy Lakes does the same thing. They have a huge,
you know,
Anyway,
anyway.
J House
But
has
now it's a
a
McMillan.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's the old
Right,
in-
out of McMillan's.
Basically,
No,
no
you
is the
can't do that
answer. I
anymore.
mean, lots of people have suggested that, but Oregon's sort of ethic right now is that it ruins your self-esteem if you're out picking up litter along the highway.
Remember how they just passed the bill for, that they said that inmates, it was they just passed it, you know, like I said, now inmates can no longer do laundry, cook, go on litter patrols, do all that kind of stuff, because we just voted it in. It was just in November, that one that said that they were being indentured servants. Remember that one? That's what it was, guys. It was hidden in that, and we all fell for it. Well, I didn't, I read it. Like I said, afterwards.
You touched a really important thing, though. I didn't, I voted no.
I voted yes first, and then I read it more in depth, and then I voted no.
We are getting sold a line of crap routinely by very expert spinmeisters.
Yes.
When ballot measure 110 first showed up, should you go to the joint for a joint? Well, no, I mean, but these are wolves in sheep's clothing, and we are the sheep because we are not doing the due diligence to look under the hood and to see what these ballot measures really do.
well, even the people that were for it, that were helping write it, one of which came to our meeting, now says, whoops, that was not a right idea.
But the problem is getting rid of it, because
Yeah.
during the election, I kept saying, that they'd say, what do you want to do about 110? Repeal it. Well, the problem is you're going to run into a wall of money, because Oregon's threshold to the ballot is very low. And so a lot of national groups want to test us because the path to the ballot is pretty flat. I think the psilocybin thing is going to end badly. That's a very potent drug, and they're going to have people with inadequate training.
They sold it on veterans.
Yeah.
The word veterans got that thing
Yep,
passed.
it was PTSD, and psilocybin is the magic fix for veterans with
They
PTSD.
get used so much.
Yeah.
And then, so, also, I'm showing my age again. So, whatever happened, what would take to get like the CCCs back? The civil service?
WVA, CCC.
Get them into some kind of trade, some kind of, I mean, my dad was in that and built stuff up on Mount Hood.
They have that for
just,
kids.
you
It's
know,
called
it
Northwest Youth Corps, but that's for kids. They don't have it for indigent
Oh.
people. You know, what's that word? Is that the word?
Indigent.
Indigent. Yes, that's the word. Thank you.
Well, the problem
That's
that
how
you get into is, I mean, I see this battle goes on next door a lot, is people refer to the people, the addicted, whatever, as service resistant. Well, you get flamed and trashed and deplatformed on Nextdoor for even mentioning that. I mean, it's like these people have been absolved of any form of responsibility whatsoever. And if they want to do drugs and, you know, live on the sidewalk and steal or whatever, well, that's fine. We're welcoming alternative lifestyles, you know. And I actually hear people seriously bantering back and forth over this stuff because beliefs, emotions, and feelings have outweighed logic when it comes to public policy.
One thing about ballot measure 110 is, I think a lot of people voted for it because it promised that people who wanted treatment would get it. And that hasn't happened.
Right.
And so, you know, like I say, you can debate sort of the merits of legalizing it, but one of the central promises was there was going to be all this money and that people who needed treatment would get it. And that has not happened.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that has to be fixed. I mean, the Secretary of State has not, that with a whole host of recommendations. I mean, the implementation was a disaster.
A friend of mine's son's a Portland police officer. They pulled over a guy that had an ounce of crank in the glove box of the car. And they said, if you let us search the rest of the car, we won't arrest you. So they took the crank and let him go. They asked him, do you want help? He's like, yeah, right. But they let him go anyway because there's no sense because Schmidt won't prosecute him because they consider that a social justice thing. I mean, an ounce of crank, that ought to be federal, DEA. But they just let him go.
Where did your petition go? Did it make it all the way around? Oh, you got it back already?
I have one at home if you need.
Yeah, you can print those, a little shameless proselytizing here. www.votebeforetolls.org. You can sign up for email alerts and you can print petition forms, and I wholeheartedly urge you to do so.
You have to be very careful, though, that you follow the instructions exactly.
Or they will zero them out.
You don't want to put a dash between the month and the year. It's got to be a slash. I mean, they will actually throw them out.
Yes, they
or
will.
Something like that.
And I know that you have watched people sign these because you're going to be attesting to the fact that you saw the people in this room sign this.
Circulator.
So on Mondays, out at Lents Park, there's a van that comes and says showers. Then they have all these tents, and then there's lots of people lining up and getting food. Is that the city? Is that the county? I didn't know. They get a lot of services there.
I don't know the answer.
I don't either. I guess it'd be the county.
It's a nonprofit.
Is that with CBS?
It's called PDX
Saints.
Saints.
Love on the Streets.
Saints.
Are
they?
Is it private?
It's a nonprofit, yeah.
And it's so popular, it's actually Monday and Fridays.
Yeah.
Okay. I know on Mondays I see it.
And they brought in a lot of other partners to line up with her. She's got one that helps sex workers, I believe. They have clothing and makeup for sex workers, and they have the laundry service that comes in.
I know there's a lot of stuff going on there.
There's a lot of stuff, yes, but those are nonprofits. And I think some of it is probably grant money through different organizations.
I came up with an idea a few years ago, but I'm on the board of the Sumner Neighborhood Association. We're small but scrappy, and over in Northeast. And I saw a TV story about the high cost of disposing of the zombie RVs that are left behind, the motorhomes and stuff. Well, I've been around RVs most of my life, and I can tell you that in this climate, most of those RVs, the motorhomes, probably don't have 10,000 miles on them. So maybe the body's shabby, but underneath the chassis is still okay. And I talked to some of the city people and some people I know in the truck repair industry. How about taking some of these things and repurposing them, and rather than spending all this money on demolishing them, the ones that are salvageable, use them as portable shower facilities, portable medical triage, maybe portable kitchens or laundry facilities. And basically I was told that with all the permits and the inspections and the bureaucracy involved, it would be cheaper to go out and just buy a brand new purpose-built motorhome to do that with. by the time the red tape was involved, that the idea would not fly.
Anyone in Oregon can sign.
That was my question,
Yes,
because
anyone.
I live in Columbia
Doesn't
County,
matter.
and
Any county.
Any county, yeah.
You're gonna drive the roads.
Yeah, they changed it so it doesn't mean you don't have to separate it by county.
I was,
Right. I knew you were gonna say that.
So I think everybody here, except for you, since you're in Lebanon, is actually in this District 3 for this county position. And so I just want to remind everybody, and this is just really direct, that the only way we're going to get these type of spitballing ideas through is through elected people. And so I would recommend that, Todd, I mentioned I've called you because I'm helping Julia get some signage out on some main thoroughfares, but you should not only know who's elected, but who's running, and you need to support people. And you came tonight, so you care, everybody cares here, but those are the kind of things that your actions, like I try to think in terms of, I love what you said about your family, Julia, like what are you gonna do? And so I'd like to say to everybody here, like we all should take that to heart, right? So complain all you want, but use your anger for energy.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure you ask her what she needs tonight.
I would
if you
take
wanna
as many
support her.
flyers as you can print out, so I can go door to door and talk to my neighbors.
So was it good
You're gonna
support
need
you
your
were
clipboard,
there?
Betsy, to
Yes.
pass around to people.
oh, sure, here,
I should have a sign-in sheet.
Oh,
well, here's a magic sign-in sheet.
If anybody's interested in helping, if you want to,
And here's a
phone
pen
number,
that
email
goes with the
address.
magic sign-in sheet.
Yeah, because if you want to know what my ultimate accountability will be, in addition to, like, I don't just disappear, and I was really involved in, when the school district was trying to close the Lents neighborhood school, is I take
Talk about
account.
Marshall.
No, the Lents elementary school.
Oh, the one over here, Oliver P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is I have a high sense of accountability, but at the end of the day, the person who holds me most accountable is my mom.
I know her mother, and her mother is a force of nature.
And so, I always feel like when I vote on something, like, am I going to speak up on something I care about? Not only do I want to sleep at night, so I speak my truth. If I'm the one no vote, that's okay. I'm for sure going to try and win, though, because I'm very competitive. But my mom and my community and people who know me hold me accountable, and I take that really seriously because I've lived in this community for 57 years. And so, I go to the grocery store, I get held accountable, to the bank,
I've called and yelled at her about some of that dumb stuff that PPS did.
And believe me, if I don't agree with you, I'm not gonna, I will give you my argument about why I did that. Like, sometimes people change my mind, but I'm also like a fierce defender of my point of view, because usually I've done a lot of research, I've read everything. When the school board has meetings, we get packets of 1,000, sometimes 1,000 pages for a week. This is a volunteer job. I read everything.
Would you put a little star next to yours or write juvenile? Cool.
I followed you all through my cases through PPS. And in fact, when you're on board, and it was great. I went to the district meetings and all of that, and you were great.
I'm still in there fighting.
Yeah, and we're both alums from OPP, Lent. Yeah, and my mom and my father, when it was on 92nd.
It was a tragedy. Last year, they recommended converting the whole school to be a Spanish immersion school.
Yes.
And what that ignored is there's a lot of kids, because you can't join a Spanish immersion program. I'm all for them. My kids went through a Spanish immersion, well, 2 of my kids did. But if you move into a neighborhood in 1st grade, you can't then go to your neighborhood school. You have to go to Marysville. And so, which means for some people you're crossing 102nd, 92nd, and 82nd. And it was like, that was the worst decision. I mean, I was a no vote, and there were 2 other board members and the student rep who voted against it. But it was such a, like, hey, the Lent community doesn't have a voice, because only 3 of them came to the meeting. It was like, well, these people are, lots of people are working, night shifts, or they're single parents, or English isn't their first language. It was such a runover, and I mean, that's the type of, thing that I made my other board members
They
listen to a
didn't
long
want it.
speech. Pardon?
The students, the families that go to school there did not want it.
No, and they will tell you that I was the person who gave voice to, their concerns, and like there's no childcare, for I'd say you have to. Some people have to cross.
Who thought of
Families
that?
have to cross.
Who thought of that? Let's
Yeah. Yeah,
tar
well,
and feather 'em.
it was a recommendation from the deputy superintendent, and there was no childcare, there was no they weren't going to provide transportation, and until we had a meeting where I, insisted that all those students who were having to cross 3 busy streets, if they were going to be sent to Marysville because they, their family moved apartments or changed neighborhoods, they got there after kindergarten, and they couldn't be in the Spanish immersion program, that the district needed to transport them.
Absolutely.
Well, believe it or not, it wasn't that obvious to everybody. Unfortunately.
Did they get busing?
Yes.
Okay.
And childcare.
Okay.
But it was only because I spoke up, and another board member, and a couple parents who had the resources and the ability to, show up at the board meetings and speak up.
Speaking of children, that is one of the things that I talked to Angela at her meeting. I was able to kind of highlight that our children have to walk through just a massive amount of homelessness to get to Kelly. Mm-hmm. And it only came to light to the city once we took a friend of mine and I were photographers, and we went down the street and just started taking pictures, and it was like an ant hill. People started streaming out of their vehicles and kind of approaching us, but it was the only way I could bring life to it. And they started seeing that our children, which is our future, I mean, there's a lot of older people, but where is our youth? Our youth is being suckered into a lot of drug addiction and everything else, but they have to walk through it every day to get to school.
So something like that, I hope you will reach out. I'll give you my email address.
Yeah.
That anybody.
But Angela opened up that door for us to talk about that openly with Ted Wheeler that didn't show up, but the message was sent.
That was our first press conference, and then he saw it our way the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge issue. Just the Kellogg parents, the brand new school that was opened on 67th and Powell. It was a rebuild of the previous Kellogg school, and you have kids walking down Powell, and those little turnouts, camp.
Yeah.
People are camping. There's RVs.
There was just a trailer of prostitution, and they didn't believe me until I took the pictures. Young women that got off the high school bus got off at 60 Flavel and 92nd, and they were actually being approached. They had to walk right by the trailer with the people coming out and talking with them, and this goes on a lot here in this community, and so we're not only just fighting for homelessness, we're fighting for our future, for our children to be able just at least to get to school safely and back home.
So that segues, so Shar and David, what are we doing? I put you guys on the spot, because you guys get things done. What's happening with the homeless crap under the
I saw that
viaduct on
coming up.
97? It's been that way.
I know,
They
and it's
cleaned up all
wrong.
everywhere
It's
else.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We keep, it's an area where ODOT, PDOT, and TriMet meet. And
Yeah, because the freeway is ODOT. Below on either side is PBOT. I mean, it's insane the way they push the.
And nobody wants to take responsibility, so it's wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's an area, we have areas, pockets of our community
And then there's TriMet.
that are constant, and so I think that's why you see us being so tired, and we love it when people come to here, but, it just seems like We even met with Sam Adams in a small group, and he promised he wouldn't put one of those encampments in this area because we already have so much going on. It's not that we don't support it, but it's like we've supported it for so long that we were hoping to get some relief.
What about 105th and Reedway? I thought that was a done
104th
deal.
and Reed, no it is, because they just got the permit today. I'm trying to get the site plan.
It's
But
a
the first
swamp
email I
area.
sent, I'm blocked to the Safe Rest Village team. So I'm trying to get the site plan to see what they're doing over there.
Yeah, so
So is this violative of what Sam promised you? I mean, Sam's gone
yes,
now.
it
but-
is, if that's what's happening.
The
because
safe, this is Dan Ryan did the Safe Rest Villages.
Oh,
Sam
yeah.
Adam was doing the bigger ones.
The camp, the camps.
Right, yeah.
You're
It's-
right.
Dan Ryan's doing the smaller one. It's over on
Correct.
104th and Reedway.
But if they were gonna put that one in, we were just begging him not to
Right,
put
put
others
another,
in.
but we'll probably get Reedway.
Well, and you guys might want to go down to one of the city council meetings and just say, look, we're all here. We have borne a disproportionate burden. We've got people brandishing guns here. We've got these jurisdictional beefs that result in the proliferation of camping. There's got to be someplace else.
Yeah, we've talked to the city so much, and we even had, I couldn't believe it, that they made like a 2-story building down at the end of the cul-de-sac, which is the entrance to
By
the
the
max.
max, yeah.
I mean, you had to walk through a gauntlet of this mess, and it stayed there for, I don't know,
Did it ever
a
get
year or
cleaned
two.
up? Did it
I
ever-
don't know. I just.
Yeah, because we had them out. We had TriMet Security out.
Yeah.
We had, yep. We
Well,
had-
that's how the max platforms along I-205 are, where they're full of homeless people.
Uh-huh.
We spent $3.5 billion on max, and it's not safe even to go there, let alone ride on it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
So I mean, I appreciate you being here, and it's just.
You might want to email Chris Warner. He is on the governor's staff now. He's part of the senior leadership team. He ran PBOT. And
You said Chris Warner. I used to work with Bruce Warner, who was
I-
on TriMet. and
Well,
Different set of Warners,
Yeah.
yes.
Bruce Warner is a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Um,
I worked with him I retired from PDC, and he was the executive director. He's the one I called, and I never called anybody I've ever worked for, and he sent out his security person, but they don't want, no one wants to take really responsibility. They all these areas cross over one another, and they just want to point that
Fingers, yep.
Yeah, and
the homeless know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
They know where these areas are.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Warner, he ran PBOT, and he's now one of Governor Kotek's senior people. And just say, why is it we can't get some jurisdiction, whether it's ODOT, TriMet, PBOT, to step up? I'll bet you're going to get a response that says, not my problem anymore. But as far as I'm concerned, he works for the chief executive officer of this state. It damn sure is his problem.
Yeah, it is, and somebody's got to take responsibility, because that area is, there's no way in, that we could use that
Well, you've
lot
got that, and then you've got
safely.
right under.
Yeah, there was a lady killed right just around the corner.
Yeah, that was 2 blocks from my home.
Is Bruce still on the TriMet board?
No, he retired, so he's no longer with.
Who's
TriMet.
chair of TriMet right now? I
don't know.
I'll
have to look again.
If that platform is unusable,
It is.
It is.
It is.
TriMet ought to know that, and those board people are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. And you ought to be able to find one of them somewhere who is sympathetic.
They know.
Yeah, we've talked
They
to
know. It's been like this for years. It's not a surprise.
Can I have my pen back? I want to. This is where I might be able to do you a favor. I'm not familiar with all the streets that you're calling off. What is this
Southeast 92nd.
Southeast 92nd.
Flavel. To Crystal Springs.
Crystal Springs.
And what's the area that? Shar, what is the area that is, they call it, as we come up Knott here?
If you come up Knapp here?
Knapp.
Knapp?
Nap is another huge, it's cleaned right now because
It's been cleaned.
It's been clean for a
we
while.
walked through it and took the guardian angels and
Yeah.
kind of cleared it out.
Yeah, but they had a camp down there in the field a little while ago.
What's
and it
that
just
area that's
recently
called?
Cleaned it up.
Yeah, what do they call that at the platform, right?
The max, the max stop.
Oh, you mean the Flavel?
92nd.
Yeah, this is
Flavel
Flavel
stop, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
platform, but-
Yeah,
Flavel.
Flavel.
92nd and
Flavel.
Flavel
Uh-huh.
is
Stop.
the max stop.
Yes.
And it goes from 92nd to Crystal Springs, and everything that's in between that whole area,
Yeah.
along Johnson Creek and along the cul-de-sac there, they take down the sign all the time.
It's
The
Mount
cul-de-sac
Scott. It's
is
Mount Scott Boulevard.
Boulevard.
Yeah.
But it is, this max stop is unusable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right under the 205.
Okay, and the jurisdictions that are fighting are ODOT, PBOT,
PBOT,
TriMet.
And
Oh
TriMet.
my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same go around on the multi-use path.
All right, I'm gonna make you guys a promise tonight. I'm gonna call Chris Strickler, who runs ODOT,
Thank you.
and bitch about it.
And the other thing about that, the I-205 bike route, which is
Well, that's
what she's referring to.
Multi-use path.
The
along-
tents are
along the
taking over
freeway.
half the bike lane. Like I have to run into them I'm a biker and I have to run into them all the time. Because they're more than halfway.
Any other part of the city?
No.
They
No.
ran my grandson out. They ran my grandson out of there. He's
Drives me
7 feet
crazy.
tall. And he literally had to go, he said, Nana, the only way I got out of there was I turned around and round and round, and the guy was so confused. He left me alone, and I was able to get out.
You ought to send Tina down there, Sergeant,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Fort Kennedy.
Fort Kennedy's Tina.
She's straightening them out.
But Betsy, that entire multi-use path has been covered with, the homeless for years.
Years, yeah.
Is that the
And
one
this-
they cleared out for the Hood to Coast?
No,
They
that's
put
all
that-
right.
They cleared out in August for the Hood to Coast.
Yeah.
I know that because I'm in the running, I was in the running industry. Yeah, they clear it out for that and then everybody comes right back in, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's the same way that they've cleared up when President Biden was here.
Okay.
They cleaned up.
Oh, they
Marine.
cleaned up for him, yeah.
Yeah, and, I mean, talk about cynical and disingenuous. All right, so it looks like we're at the witching hour.
We are.
I want to thank,
Oh, excuse me, I don't want to, go ahead.
I was just going to thank everybody for coming. Thank you. Thank you for coming by.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us. The meeting is adjourned.
Angela,
I just
thanks
got
for
it,
being here.